Earl, up top, rising, layup, good. It's a triple-double for Bella Earl.
Those matched up with a speedy guard. Great screen, spin move, layup, he missed it. Williamson fights for the board. His putback is good.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Straight Out Whack podcast here on this, I guess we're going to call it Thursday morning. Daryl's a little under the weather. Hopefully he can get through this. He's been coughing up his lungs. I'm going to throw that out there right now while we've been prepping for this. But it is great to be back on another episode. This week, it is UTA Lady Mavs preview week. Daryl will have their season preview out tomorrow. But we have a special guest, as you know. When we do these preview weeks, we like to have the head coaches come on, talk about things. We're trying not to make it so vanilla, where, well, tell us about your schedule, tell us about your team. We're going to get some stories and some great questions. As you know, she's one of our favorites in the league. We're going to miss her when UTA leaves, when the WAC realigns. But Shereka Wright is live from College Park, her office in College Park Center. Are you still practicing, I guess, and you're taking time out of your day to come talk to us?
No, we just finished up practice, had to huddle our group and make some coaching points, some life points, some academic points. And so I am finished with practice, and I actually sprinted to my office. And so if I'm huffing and puffing a little bit, that's why. So
Love it. Love it. That's awesome. We're so happy to have you on. Like you said, it's been a minute. I think the last time I talked to you was that press conference after the WAC tournament championship. So it's great to be back chatting it up with you.
absolutely. I think it's been a whirlwind, after that game was over with, but like extremely proud of what that group was able to, overcome. We played some really, really good basketball, and then to being in a position that we were in, I was extremely proud of them. And to say, you had a chance to go to postseason is, it's a huge part. That's what you want when you're in the program, and then going into year 6, you want to be able to build off of something special like that. So definitely excited about what we have to look forward to this year.
Okay, I told you before we started recording, I was going to kind of put you on the spot here.
Mm-hmm.
So Avery comes down with the rebound, right? On that missed free throw, or that last, if the ball doesn't get poked out of her hands, does UTA win that game? I talked to some UTA fans after, and I think we all agreed that the way that you guys were able to get up the floor, as quickly as you could, I know it's disappointing. I know it's hard to talk about now, but like from your standpoint, if that doesn't get poked away, does UTA win that game?
I think that's a good question, Kyle. I don't know necessarily we win the game. I think we put ourselves in a position to get a shot, a high percentage shot off. But I think that there are some other things to look at too as well. I think it's a situation that we had a timeout to call a timeout to be able to advance the ball right when we got the rebound. But, normally in those situations, Avery, as smart as she was, her basketball IQ was like none other. And normally, like I said, she would probably have dribbled that ball up and probably tried to kick it up. But I think there's a lot of scenarios. I'm a firm believer the team that was supposed to win that championship won that. And, we were in every position, but, when it comes down to plays and it's a game of runs, and, Grand Canyon had the longest run, and then their run was a little bit longer than ours. And we had chances to, to be able to, keep the lead, but we didn't. And then we had positions to, possessions where we, either we turned the ball over or we took a quick shot, or, we didn't get back in transition. So there are a lot of variables that played a part in that game. But, what I will say is that the team that showed up to play against Grand Canyon that first time we played against Grand Canyon, that showed up the third time. The second time we played them, no, hey, they beat us in the ground. But, I think that game, that championship game, we showed up for that and gave, people, the viewers, a really good game. And everybody that was in WAC Vegas got a really good game that day.
Well, I'll tell you what, watching from Southern California and keeping an eye on the Twitterverse, it was blowing up when you guys took the lead in the second quarter, and even the studio analysts on some of the shows were like, is UTA going to do it? Is UTA going to end Grand Canyon's 30 whatever it was game winning streak, and force the committee to make a decision about a second WAC team?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the scenario in the case. I mean, you're talking about, again, a great storyline to be able to talk about. I mean, obviously, you got to give Molly Miller and Grand Canyon, a lot of credit for what they did last year. That was unbelievable, especially in the time that we're playing in, where there's so much parity for them to do what they did. But I think that one thing that I will say is a great teaching point just for our team and any team across the country. I think that those seniors were an important piece. The culture piece stood out, and they understood that those habits every single day matter, and that showed up. They knew how to win games. But I know that we did. We had them on the ropes there, but I don't think they panicked. And you got to give Trinity San Antonio a lot of credit, for what she did with that program, especially as a senior down the stretch. And so, those things matter. You pay attention. You got to give credit where credit is due. But, I do feel like, from my end, Avery Brittingham and Talia Clark and Coy Love, those three were huge that moment. And Talia, Clark, you got to give her credit, for somebody that offensively did a lot for us. I thought she did an unbelievable job defensively. Probably one of the most, one of the prolific three-point shooters in the country at this time. With that Grand Canyon had. So, give us a lot of credit, but they deserve that because those players stepped up in the moments that they needed to.
I just want to point out, I had I had a part in UTA Lady Mavs basketball winning games in the WAC tournament. I'm not going to lie. I mean, to get one of your admins come up and shake my hand as I walk into the press conference after the semifinal game, like, hey, thanks for the tweet. We saw it, and then Shereka even pointed out after the championship game, Kyle, we know what you were. So I just want to say I had a little bit of, play in what your Lady Mavs did that weekend. I like to, that's my claim to fame. I have this impact sometimes.
You like to poke, and that's okay. But you know what? I think that's great in our game right now. I think that sometimes you need to be able to call out certain things. And I don't think you called anything out wrong. I just wanted you to know that I had noticed it, and that's all. But I think that that's great for the game. And, I'm a competitor, and, results matter.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing that people forget a lot of times is that we need results. And so at the end of the day, we gave results, and that's all really that mattered at that time.
Well, it's funny, I poke at the bear. I'm a Utah Valley alum, like that's where I graduated from. And I picked against the UVU men's team almost all year long, right? I mean, they rolled to 15-1, the WAC regular season champions. And funny story, for just, off base a little bit, but funny story here. I was at ACU when they clinched at least a share of the WAC regular season title and, got to go in the locker room to video the celebration and everything. As soon as I walked in there, all those players were like, that's the WAC Hoops Nation guy. He keeps picking against us. He keep, and that was the thing. Like, it was kind of, it's fun to see though, to learn. Not learn, because I know you follow us, really, a ton, but like to see others and to get that reaction, like it's more of an appreciation, I guess, gratitude that they're following us, because that means when they come and say things, they're like, you're paying attention, and that makes me feel good. I know it makes Daryl feel good, and so like that I think that's the coolest part about it. I don't care about getting shouted out, like, hey, don't pick against us or whatever. But it makes me feel better because I know people are following, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and Kyle and Daryl, I talked about this a lot. I feel like again, the WAC is, doesn't get the notoriety that it needs to get. We have some really, really great teams in our league. And night in and night out, we're getting some really good play on the floor. And so, but it doesn't get talked about. And so I do appreciate what you all do. And I think that, more people need to kind of tune into those things. That's why I've always been a big advocate of, us having media day, because, we need to tell a story. Like, people want to know about your programs.
Yep.
And anytime that we get a chance to do that, I'll be really honest with you. That's why I did press conferences every day or every week in the summertime, because I wanted people to kind of continue to follow us what we had going on. And so if people don't hear about you, you don't talk about it, don't have a storyline, it's not anything that people want to, keep an eye on. I
Yep.
want people to have eyes on us here at UT Arlington. That's the biggest thing. And so, so anytime that we can tell a story, anytime that you all can tell a story is beneficial. So I welcome that anytime that you guys do that. So I appreciate that.
Speaking of a story, sorry, Daryl, I got one more question, as we get into this. Is there any chance you took your team back to Purdue, your alma mater, where you had your collegiate career, All-American, all that stuff, and the welcome was great. I was there for it. We were there, is there any chance that you'll ever be able to talk Katie into bringing her boilers to College Park Center, so that they can experience, the Lady Mavs on their home floor?
Oh, no, that's a good question, Kyle. I don't know if I've ever kind of thought about that. I may need to have that conversation with Katie, at some point as we kind of go along. I mean, I think scheduling is a big thing too, and you're trying to find some things, but I think it could be in the work in the future. You just never know; it may pop up.
Sorry, another thing on the schedule, Shereka. I know for the men, it's really difficult to get games, especially for WAC teams, right? Like, how is it? Is it similar on the women's side, or is it that more teams are more open to playing games, whether that's on the road or at home? I know a lot of teams don't want to play a WAC team on the men's side because, well, they're not a bad quad 4 team, but they're not a quad 1 team, and so it doesn't help them one way or the other. Is it similar on the women's side for you and for maybe the other WAC schools that you've talked to other coaching staffs about scheduling?
Yeah, I think for me, I think that the scenarios and situations that we deal with, Power Fours have the luxury to be able to pay for games, and they want to play at home. And I look at their situation is a little bit different than ours. They can get in 7 to 8 teams in their conference because, again, you look at it from top to bottom. Once they start conference play, that's the one thing they're concerned about. They want to, be able to stack those wins. They want to get to double-digit wins before they go to conference play. But I also think that, it's a situation too. They want to be mindful about where they're going to play on the road. If I
Right.
take a chance to go play, excuse me, at a UT Arlington, is it a good quality win or could be a bad loss? I don't necessarily feel like it is that way because, again, I think from top to bottom, I know scheduling is important. I think that every year we sit and we talk, I try to focus on, again, what's playing a good quality non-conference to prepare ourselves for that. So I do think it's hard. I think that this is by far the first time I feel like we did a really good job in scheduling. To be able to get 5 games non-conference at home is really, really good because it's difficult to be able to do that. So I'm definitely excited about that. And I think we have some really good quality opponents coming into the College Park Center.
Okay, I want to talk about how excited the girls were when you told them that they're going to Hawaii for Christmas.
They were extremely excited. Well, they were kind of like, yay. And I was like, well, I'm very excited, whether you all are or not. I think it really hasn't dawned on them. But, I have to give, obviously my athletic director, John Fagg, and our deputy who's over fundraising, Ira Childress, a lot of credit. When I came to them, I looked at it going into year 6. We've done a lot of amazing things here since I've been here. And I felt like, that's something that, we've earned. And I also felt like it'd be good for, even our fans to be able to experience that. I think the last time that, they've done anything like this is when Krista Gerlich was here and they played in the MTE, at a beautiful island. So I think it's a great opportunity for us to be able to put on a neutral floor against, really good, high quality opponent of ECU. And then playing against 2 Power Fours in Colorado and Texas A&M, whose styles of player are different, but very similar to some things we see in the WAC. So I'm extremely excited for our program, for our fans, and more so for our players to be able to go do this and go to Hawaii because they may not get a chance to do that.
What was your reaction? Obviously, the triple round robin this year with losing GCU in Seattle. Any opinions, or was it one of those things like we're just going to play the games where they tell us to play them? And I know they had really no choice but to do that because it's so hard to get games after a break.
Yeah, I mean, Daryl, I think that, that was one of the reasons why I try to really focus on a really good non-conference schedule of being able to be at home. Because when you look at it, I mean, that's tough. You're trying to beat a team 3 times. It's tough in itself to do it twice. And so, you're just trying to look at and see, okay, where am I starting at? Am I starting at home? Am I starting on the road? But it's going to be a little bit difficult. And I know for us, we're looking at it. We're starting off at Tarleton State, and then we're turning around and having to go to Cal Baptist, right after that. So the situations are not easy. This is what we're dealt with. I'm not going to make excuses. It is making sure that you try to steal games on the road. You want to play as solid basketball as you possibly can. I'm proud of how we took care of home court advantage last year. We had that, obviously one loss at home was remarkable for us. And so it's going to be critical for us to take care and protect home and to be able to steal games, especially if you want to be in that 1 and 2 slot.
I'm sorry. I'm just looking at that, like you said, that the start of that conference schedule, like, going from, Tarleton and then going to CBU on Thursday, like Monday, Thursday games. That's not terrible, but then it's like you're at CBU on Thursday, on New Year's Day, and then 2 days later you got to come back home to play Southern Utah. Like I talked with Rob Jeter this week, the Southern Utah men's head coach, and that was one thing that he mentioned has been tough in scheduling, is where you got to go on the road, and then 2 nights later you have to come home, where your opponent may already be within driving range, whether Southern Utah's at Tarleton or ACU or something. They could be in Arlington before you guys get back. How challenging is that especially with the travel situation where there could be delays, you couldn't get back? I don't know. I'm just curious your thoughts on that. I mean, obviously it's a schedule. You have to just deal with it, right? That's just what they put together, but that's still got to be a huge challenge, and maybe a little, I don't want to say little. There's probably a lot of stress involved in that, because you're trying to prep for, a conference game where, battling the elements, I guess we could say.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think the biggest thing is that this is where your bench is so critical. I think that when you look at it is that do you have, can you get 10, 11 into your bench where you got productivity from that, to where you can be able to travel and play at a different style and be able to sub and not have a drop off. Injuries are going to be an important piece, right? It's your strength coach, it's your athletic trainer. Like, this is where they really come into effect. Can we be creative of how we do certain things, is how we travel? It just is what it is. Excuse me. We got to figure it out, and we will, and just deal with that. But like you said, can you steal games when you need to steal games? And the reality of it is that you just got to be able to show up, and that's why you're really right now trying to establish a culture, a toughness, a grit of your program and stuff. But like I said, this too. I mean, I'll use a W for a perfect example. Even though that they were chartering, I still think it's the same thing. Look what they had to maneuver through and had to figure that out. But it's the teams that could figure out their bench, can turn around and get some momentum and be creative in how you play. And I'll be honest and tell you guys, I know we'll dive into that a little bit. I think that's why our roster was built the way it was, is because I love the versatility of this group and how we can play different lineups is going to be able to help us to be able to withstand this.
One last question about the schedule situation. You're playing every WAC team 3 times. The goal is to get the 1 or 2 seed, because you obviously get that bye to the WAC semifinals with the way the bracket's set up for WAC Vegas this year. How, I don't want to say, I don't know if excited is the right word, but like, how anxious are you that, okay, we're playing a team 3 times, we're going to have to make adjustments every time, and then that 4th time could be the most important time that we play, because obviously, when it all comes down to it, regular season championships are great, but in this league, it's a 1-bid league. That 4th time that you play somebody, are you going to be like a football team where you're not putting everything out, in one game, you're bringing out something new the next, and then, like, how excited are you and your staff for that challenge, as that comes, that you're going to have to make an adjustment, knowing how many times you're going to have to play a conference opponent?
Well, I love it. It's because, again, people get to really see, how good of a coach you are, right? And then what type of staff you have. And it's about thinking outside the box and then making adjustments. It's like playing chess. And so, I mean, whether you put it all out there or not, it's about, again, execution. You still got to guard it. Can players make plays? And I think that ultimately is what it's really going to come down to. Can you get a stop? Defensively, can you get stops? The game may be 45, 46 at the end of it. It may be a low scoring game, and it may look like that towards the end. I would not be surprised if scoring kind of starts to go down on teams just because of the travel, and we've seen everybody and they kind of know what you do. I know the lineups will look different, right? Because you just don't know. Like, I think that every coach right now is just kind of worried about injuries right now, and we're getting close to that time. And so, that's also a reason why I pushed back our start date to official practice. I'm really trying to make sure that we're preserving that and that our kids are not burnt out by the time that we get to that start of February. We know the January stuff is always, hey, you're excited at that time, but boy, February hits you at a different level because now, like, right, you've gone through all of this. You got to see this team again. Can your kids withstand that? Can they kind of kick in their second gear of what they really need to? So I think it's going to be really important for us as a staff to really find, different ways of keeping our kids engaged in what we have going on.
Shereka Nia Threet back for another campaign. Had a solid year last year. Kendall Robinson, the all-freshman selection. Just talk about some of the expectations that you have of the returning group from last year that learned the lessons from the Avery Brittinghams, the Corey Loves, the Talia Clark, and maybe tell us about a couple of the newcomers. I know you got the Reynolds sisters, a couple of which have Power 5 experience. Just tell us about kind of this mix of roster that you've put together for 25-26.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just tell you guys, I think the biggest thing is for me and the staff was to have a core consistency return. And what I will say is that I felt like that was an important piece going into this year. You look at it, I'll start with, obviously with Nia Threet, she's been my starting point guard for the last 3 years. And so, and I don't know who in the WAC probably returns with that most experience, but it starts with her. Her obviously her stats may not show a lot of it all, but her toughness, her ability to be able to defend, the best players on the perimeter, I think goes a long way with us. Her value of what we do here matters. So you want to have somebody that's leading the charge, knows what your expectations are. So it starts with her. Kendall Robinson has had an unbelievable freshman year and is having an unbelievable sophomore campaign right now in the preseason, which I'm calling the mini camp. She looks really, really good right now. I think she has really worked on her game at another level. And I'm expecting high expectations of her ability to be able to get downhill, her ability to, be able to knock down shots. Her mid-range games has been really, really good. And she's, she can defend too as well. But her physicality is going to be important and needed for us. And then, Laura Bello didn't get a chance to get on the floor for us because of injury. She played in our exhibition game, and then we didn't see her after that. And so, again, expectations are going to be high for her. Somebody that can be a rim protector for us, as we will need. I have not had a true 5 probably since, Valkova that played with me, that year with Avery Brittingham coming in. So, we finally have a true 5 that is returning, in that position. Maria Perkins, going into her junior year, had a lot of, experience off the bench and want to continue to grow that. She finally gets to move into her position of a true position of a 4. And so we really need her to continue to have some consistency with us on that. Callie Hazlip, is another kid that, hey, she's going to have to replace a lot of shooting, obviously what we got from Talia Clark. She's got to be able to step into that role and to provide that shooting for us. And so she has a lot of experience with that. And then Alexia Gudo, again, another player alongside with Nia Threet that had some starting times for us. Again, it's been the glue kid for us, but the experience part matters. And so that in itself, the core is the culture, right? Those are the things that they know what to expect from a UTA program and a culture and when they come in. So it was important for them to establish that with our newcomers. And so as you talked about a little bit with the Reynolds sisters, we made a decision to, make a move and make a push for them. True size coming in, a lot of experience, starting off with Mila Reynolds, who, as a transfer, had some time over at Maryland and obviously at Purdue, but had some injuries along the way. And so her biggest thing is to, show a campaign of somebody getting to see you and know you. It's like no different than Coy Love. When she came in, obviously had a really good career at Vanderbilt, but, people didn't see her. So I think it's more so for her to really establish herself of who she is, not to put too much pressure on her, but I like her versatility and what the things she can do. And then her sister, Amaya Reynolds, who played a lot last year for Purdue, very skilled perimeter player, true, jump shooter. I love that. I haven't seen a really true jump shooter in a long time. And so I like that experience that she does bring. And then obviously her younger sister, who was a highly touted freshman coming in. Kira Reynolds, who's a true 6'4" kid, long and versatile. And so they give us some size that we have not had in a very long time. I think by far this roster is longer and bigger than I've ever had since I've been here. And so I do like that. And also going alongside that in the post, Jen Rodriguez, who we've gotten as a transfer from Salt Lake, who had a really good career. Again, very physical, like the size that she does bring for us, a physicality that, I want to make sure that we continue to have within the WAC is going to be critical for us as we move forward. Jaden Atkinson, who is a transfer from Colorado and also spent time at Old Dominion. She finally came home. Long, athletic, high ceiling perimeter player. And so I like what she can do for us. Again, versatility, as we talked about before, is going to be, really, really critical for us. And so I think that those kids are really, really good. And we have some late additions. Obviously, we will have that. Aaron Sellers comes in, again, another lefty guard, who is going to be able to add some more experience too as well. So the word I use for this group is promising. It's a committee piece that we're going to be able to win by, not like similar teams that we've had in the past, but I do think it's a dangerous team once they start to click and know how to play with each other.
What's the biggest thing in terms of, you're constantly playing this juggling act out of the portal, right, with newcomers, and what's the hardest part about that process of getting them to mesh?
Daryl, yeah, very good question. I say this all the time. Like, when you get in the transfer portal, right, people think, like, oh, this is a great thing to get. Well, you're looking at a couple of things in the transfer portal, which I had to learn. I tell you, talent is one thing, and that's what you see first and foremost. But a lot goes along with character, who the person. There's a lot of things that go along with that because, again, if if the character is flawed and different things like that, it can make it very difficult to blend that with your roster. Players are trying to figure out who they are. They're trying to figure out your system. This is all new. When you go to the recruiting process, you're looking at ultimately what they do and then how they can fit into that and how you can make that work. So for me and my staff, we have to figure out, okay, how do they fit in this? How do we want to play? How do we get the most out of this young lady quickly? And so what we found out, is that, hey, a lot of skill set time, because right now maybe the skill set doesn't fit kind of what we're doing right now. We have to probably adjust that. So it is a little bit difficult, when you have some new faces, but it's critical when you have that sixth core come back, because there's not a lot of teaching with them. You're just trying to fine tune that. And you're trying to, hey, from year 3 to year 4 from last year, you have to improve in these areas. And we expect that. And so along the way, you're trying to manage all of that, but it's still at the same time, what's your non-negotiables? Your non-negotiables are, hey, playing tough. Hey, getting out here, high hands, right? We're communicating, we're talking. Ball reversal, the ball can't stick. Like, it's all of those little things that we're focusing on with this group. Because once you start doing that, so it doesn't matter who you're playing against. Fundamentally, that's what you're going to say about UTA is that they're not, probably over exciting like we probably had in the past, but we're all bigger, we're all longer. So we do clear up a lot more space than what we used to. And so that's the fun part I like about it too, is that we're having to develop this in order for us to get to where we want to be.
I like that thought. That's I mean, that's what you have to do, right? You have to have some sort of culture established with returners, but then you got to go get the right pieces, that have that talent or maybe that high basketball IQ that they can adjust on the fly. I like that. That's a great thought, especially in today's era of college basketball and the transfer portal and building rosters each year.
Yeah, and that's all I'm going along with that. Sorry to cut you off too, Cal. I think another piece of that too is that even when you're getting players from the portal, it's them not bringing what has happened at their previous institution with them.
Yeah.
And so that's another thing that we're also having to mentor, to correct, that and we want to see that they're improving with that too. So that's a work in progress, and that takes time too as well, because they don't just come in and just change that. They do bring those because it's been ingrained in them. Like, that's what has happened. So they do have to take time to adjust to that.
I want to, something I noticed in the WAC tournament, Kendall Robinson, that chip, like, she, as a freshman, like, she had a major chip on her shoulder. I think it played into the way she played. Like, it made her better, I feel like. Does she still have that chip? And are you excited for what she's going to, you already talked a little bit about her, but even more so, just that I don't know that attitude, I guess you can say, that I know you played with when as a player. Like, she seems to have something similar to that.
Yes, I've always felt that Kendall came in ahead of schedule because one, I felt like she had a college ready body. I always felt like she was an aggressive type player. I thought that she had to learn about herself. I mean, stamina is a big thing. I thought that she played so hard. I think it kind of gassed her a little bit. She's an X factor for us this year. I'll go ahead and put that out. How Kendall goes, how Kendall continues to improve, how Kendall continues to stay healthy, this team will continue to do and have success that we do plan to have. She's worked at her game. I am pleased with her, as a head coach. She takes coaching. And I think that that's when great players separate themselves from good players. Those players that can take coaching, they don't get phased by the tone. They listen to the message, and I feel like that is where she is really separating herself from our group right now. And so I love where she is. She's not peaking where I want her right now, and that's a good thing. But I love the fact that she has showed growth from year one to year two.
Last question for me, since we've kept you for a little bit, about a half hour now. I'm going to ask every coach in the WAC this when we do these podcasts. So, with the conference realignment happening, obviously, UTA, Tarleton State, and AC are going and mixing with the UAC and some of the teams from the ASUN next year. With this era of the WAC kind of coming to a close, I guess you could say, what's a trip that you're not going to miss when you start, a journey with the teams a little bit closer to you in, 2026, 27?
I'm not going to jinx myself because
This
I
is a
tell
safe
you.
space too, Shereka. I just want to throw it out
No,
there. This is
no,
a
I
safe
will I
space.
will not jinx myself. You know what? Every time that we've gone to and play our swing of Utah Tech in Southern Utah, the weather has been gorgeous. I always be so concerned that we're going to get up there and we're going to, run into some issue with weather, but it's been beautiful. I've always enjoyed going to, Orm's the same way too, like, right, going, play in Utah Valley. The weather has been beautiful. So I'm not going to jinx myself on that, at all with that piece. So I will probably have say that, and then I'm hoping that we have smooth flights because we do not need any delays with that. But I would probably say the Utah swing is always, the biggest thing. I'm just kind of cursed, being at Purdue and West Lafayette for 4 years, and I'm like, I just want to see the sun for once, just once. I wanted to do that and not, my car not be stuck in snow. I had like a little sun fire. And so it was critical that I made, very good turns around places where I didn't get stuck. And so I think it's that. But I'll be honest with you all, like, basketball has taken me so many places. And I think a lot of young people forget that, hey, everybody doesn't get this opportunity to travel and play basketball. And we have to remind them a lot of this at times. This is an opportunity. This is, you're not something supposed to happen. You've earned this right to do that. And so it's a privilege. And so we try to really make sure that we educate our players on that.
The snow-capped mountains of Orem, when you fly over that or when you drive into it, like, there's nothing like it. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, West Lafayette, I get it. The snow, the freezing ice, whatever you want to call it. We lived in Indiana for a long time when I was really young, but there's nothing like snow-capped mountains.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I get that.
Absolutely.
Daryl, any last questions for Shereka before we let her go?
I am good.
All right. Shereka, again, we appreciate the time. Always a pleasure. Like I said, one of our favorites. And, the Lady Mavs, after a great run, put themselves in a chance to win a championship and go to the NCAA tournament last year, went to the WNIT.
Won a game.
Won a game.
Won a game in the WNIT. And, now I think there's more excitement around that program.
Yeah, it's definitely excitement. Just stay tuned. I love to be the underdog. I love the fact that people have to wait and see. And so I just think it's just to stay tuned and, see what we have to offer this year.
Stay tuned, everybody. We appreciate your support. And thanks for tuning into this episode of the Straight Outta Whack podcast. We'll see you on the next one.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Straight Outta Whack podcast. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and other podcasting platforms. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Remember to follow us on Twitter at Whack Hoops Digest and Facebook under Whack Hoops Digest for all your Whack Hoops news and information.